Welcome, beautiful, authentic action co-creators. I'm Gabrielle Angel Lilly, and this is the Authentic Action Podcast, brought to you by Gal Media, Fun Fast Productions, and the Authentic Action School. I'm super excited to be leaping into our co-created future with this new platform, and I hope we can evolve in our experiences together and apart. Also, I hope that if there is ever anything I can do for you, that you contact me without hesitation. I love making new connections. Let's see what we can do together. This podcast aims to explore what it means to design and live a good life. I hope to provide a platform for diverse ideals and have authentic and entertaining conversations with creative people from many different walks of life. I will be seeking out and speaking to fellow artists, authors, teachers, preachers, builders, paradigm shifters, evolutionary leaders, and transformational speakers who have dreams and ideas about building a better future together. I am particularly interested in mindset, conscious community building, healing through flow states, and tapping into the universal creative energy potential. My guest on today's episode is a young globetrotter with a bouncy attitude and a quick smile. I met her last year when she stayed in an Airbnb rental of mine, and I gave her a brief tour of my Head Hutt Mega-Sculpture. We've stayed in touch online passively, and since we met, I watched her travel to several countries and appear to be enjoying each visit thoroughly, which led me to ask her to be a guest on the show. It is my pleasure to introduce the infectiously playful and persistently positive Rosa Yi. Welcome, Rosa. Rosa Yi? Am I
Yeah.
Thank you for coming on the Authentic Action Podcast with me, and I'm looking forward to just learning more about you. As I was just kind of explaining, this podcast is meant to be a platform for people to share how they're designing and living a life they love, as well as dreams for the future or any other, passions that you want to have a platform for. So I guess I would love to start by just asking you for a little personal background, if you don't mind.
When it comes to my personal background, I think my childhood probably shaped a lot of the reasons the way that I am right now, because I didn't have a good childhood to begin with. And I feel like as I grew older, I kind of realized that I never lived my childhood, and in realizing that, I just kind of like embraced kind of taking control of everything and just going for it and doing things that I want no matter what anyone says, because I never had a chance to do that as a kid.
So you're are you giving yourself the childhood you didn't get in a way? Is that fair to say? I don't know. It comes to mind.
Uh, in a way, I'm just like, I feel like lately I've been doing a lot of playing. I don't have real solid plans of where I want to be 5 years from now necessarily, maybe even 1 year from now necessarily. So I feel like this is just, this is directly out of my traveling started directly out of me getting divorced.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like this is just a really great time for me to like explore and play like I should have when I was a kid. Because I had that childhood robbed from me, and I had to grow up really, really fast when I was a kid. And I feel like I never knew how to enjoy life. I never learned how to enjoy life. And so that's kind of where I am right now.
Nice. So I looked at your profile to get a sense of your story and see that you have South Korea as your birthplace, it looks like, and then growing up in Las Vegas, New Mexico. Is that background due to that transition, or one or the other? Or?
Yeah, I live in Las Vegas, Nevada, actually. But yeah, I grew up in South Korea. We moved here as a family when I was like 5 years old, and then my parents got divorced less than a year of us being here.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't a nice divorce, let's just say that. So I haven't seen my father since I was 5 years old and all this stuff. So that whole the transition from South Korea to the Americas was a really hard one for us, especially being abandoned by my father, who was the only English speaker in our family at the time. So my mom had to, she was basically my whole life, she was working like 3 jobs, and I never had any kind of parental guidance for that reason. Not saying that my mom did a wonderful job of raising us, but she just really didn't have the time to be there for us the way that she needed to be.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and I was, I'm sorry, what was that?
Yeah, you have a brother and a sister, is that correct?
No, I have a sister. I have one older sister. I have somebody listed as my brother on my Facebook, but he's not actually my brother. But me and my sister, we only have 3 years between us. I'm the younger one, but I feel like growing up, I was always the more emotionally stable one. And so I kind of took on that parental role to my older sister a lot of times. And so I think that's probably where like my I don't know how to say this. My love for just doing whatever I want comes from,
Yeah.
because I didn't have a chance to do anything I wanted when I was little. So
Your playfulness is what I've seen of you because I've only met you, I think it was around a year ago, maybe less, and then been seeing you
yeah,
online. So you've been playful, which is one of my passions as well. I just think life is too short. Not everything is better when you put play into it, anyhow. So,
exactly,
um,
exactly.
yeah.
My biggest belief is that, laughter is the best medicine.
Hmm.
And so no matter what you're going through in life, if you know how to take things lightly and just kind of like at least try to make a joke out of it, or at least try to see the silver lining in it, I think that's the most important thing, because everybody's going through shit. Everybody, no matter who you are, no matter if you're a billionaire or if you're homeless on the streets, everybody's going through something.
Hmm.
So, life isn't supposed to be easy, and I've learned that at a very young age. And so I try to make it as easy as possible for myself and for the people around me by just trying to keep a more positive attitude, I guess.
Yeah. So you just recently returned from a long trip, is that correct? Basically, like it seemed like you were traveling a lot and now you're kind of back home, or is that a
I
misconception on my part?
on 2 big vacations. So back in October, I took the whole month of October off and I went to Indonesia. I
Uh-huh.
backpacked through Indonesia for a month. That was probably one of the most amazing trips I've ever taken. I actually spent 2 weeks, I'm sorry, just 1 week, 1 week at a silent retreat.
Hmm.
And that was probably a very transformative week of my life, where I delved into a lot of my shadow self,
Hmm.
did a lot of shadow work during that week, and came to terms with my own personal negative cycles that I tend to repeat.
Hmm.
Uh, so that was a really good trip that I did that month in October, and then I came back for a couple of months, and I went to Amsterdam, Barcelona, and Lisbon for New Year's. So that was fun. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So, and now what are you up to?
Now I travel for work, as you know, because that's why we were staying at your
Right.
Airbnb.
I don't actually, if you don't mind, tell me a little bit more about what you do for work, because I actually am pretty naive I really don't know what you do. I wonder-
Not a lot of people are like, what do you do
Yeah,
exactly?
I can sense that.
I'm in sales, basically. Our company is Hideout. They manufacture TENS and EMS devices, so nerve and muscle stimulators.
Hmm.
The reason why I was in New Mexico is because that's where the Senior Olympics happen,
Hmm.
and that's why we were staying there in your Airbnb that week. But right now I'm on a NASCAR circuit, so we sponsor NASCAR, and I'm off this week, but I'm going to Atlanta next week for the next NASCAR and stuff like that. So
That sounds fun.
yeah, it is fun. It's
Yeah.
definitely a hard job to pull away from. You know, traveling as much as I do, I don't get to have as much of a personal life as most people do. It puts a hindrance in a lot of my personal relationships and stuff like this. So there's definitely a lot of cons that come along with the travel job, but at the same time, like I said, I'm just like at that point in my life where I'm just like trying to enjoy it and trying to take things lightly. And like I said, I don't have a 5-year plan, let alone a 1-year plan. So it's just kind of going with the flow and enjoying what I'm given in life right now. So
Nice. So how did you transition from feeling like you weren't having a good time to deciding, like, was it the retreat in October, or was there a process before that that kind of
I
led
think when I broke up with my ex-husband,
you?
that kind of triggered everything.
Right.
That's the first time after I broke up with my ex-husband, that was the first time I went and took like a big solo adventure. I mean, I've gone to like California and to like New York by myself a couple of times before in the past, but it's nothing that I would like call like a solo travel adventure necessarily.
Hmm.
Um, so when I broke up with my ex-husband, I went to Europe for a month by myself, and just random things started happening to me where I don't know how to explain it, but synchronicities started happening in a way and at a rate that it was way too much that it could have been a coincidence. And
Hmm.
it kind of made me realize like my inner state, the way that I am inside is manifesting everything that's outside of me. And
Hmm.
so I don't know, traveling it opened my eyes to a lot of things as far as coincidence and synchronicity and how the universe really talks to you.
Hmm.
And you're not going to get some message from God in your head talking to you or something. It's going to be some random sign that you run into when you're traveling or doing something when you're just enjoying yourself, that the world's going to present something to you and you're going to finally realize, oh, these are the signs that I've been looking for my entire life. Like this is how God is communicating to you. Not that I mean, I'm not a religious person. I don't believe in God or anything. Um, I believe in a higher power, definitely. I
Hmm.
believe in a God type of energy. And I don't know, I feel like the more you're doing what you're supposed to be doing with your life, the more that you're enjoying your life the way that you're supposed to, the more those signs come up for you. Whether it's somebody that you meet and you guys just share like similar life stories, whether it's just a city that you fall upon or whatever. There's
Hmm.
definitely signs out there if you're looking for it.
Yeah, I do. I totally agree with you. I see it very similarly. When I was looking at your page, I want to go there. If I can, I ran into a quote that you have on your page, which I really love. See if I can find it now. Um, which is from the Dalai Lama. And I don't know if you even remember it, because I know how it is when we when we make our Facebook pages and put things in there. And I won't read it, it's a big paragraph, but the gist of it was much along the lines of what you're talking about, which is that there's, you know, that our vibration, that what the frequency that we're putting out is responsible for what we're getting. And also, this is just my own words, not that quote, but I do think that you and I agree in a sense that there's like a higher power that speaks to us in some way, or that we speak to ourselves, like maybe it's to ourselves through our own higher power, but that synchronicities and the way things line up, to me, is a sign of like things beyond my capacity to control or understand, that are still kind of there to delight me. It seems like when I pay attention, maybe that's just hubris, but
Yeah. No, definitely. I mean, just to give you a short example, I have so many different examples, but a really good short example that I have is 2 years ago, I was traveling with 3 of my friends, and we were in Switzerland for literally one day. We were there for one day, traveling through Switzerland to go to France. And I was crossing this bridge that's along this river, and there's maybe 7 other bridges along this river. And all of a sudden, all my 3 friends that I'm traveling with are behind me. And all of a sudden, from in front of me, I hear somebody screaming my name, like, Rosa! And this girl that I know from Tampa happens to be on the same bridge at the same time that I am, when there's 7 other bridges across the same river.
Yeah.
Within, I mean, she was only there for 8 hours on a layover with her family too. So
Mhm.
the fact that we had even been in the same spot that day, like it's mind blowing to me, and that's something I can't just like throw into the river like it's a coincidence of some sort. It's like I don't know, whenever things like this happen to me, I feel like it's like almost like you're in a video game and you get to like a checkpoint, you know?
Right?
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
feel like I made my checkpoint there.
So do you, this is just a like a off, I don't know if it's not a random question at all, but I'm curious for my own exploration as to whether you think that we are like a lot of people talk about being like souls that set up a storyline ahead of time that then like you might have a checkpoint or what's your beliefs your beliefs about that sort of thing, if you don't mind my asking. Yeah.
You know, I always go back and forth from that question, you know, like whether you believe in free will or destiny.
Yeah.
Um, that's such a hard question to answer for me. I feel like it's, you know, when you step back and think about it from like a scientific point of view, you know, everything that we do is just a result of chemical reactions in our own body. So is it really my free will controlling those chemical reactions, or is it destiny controlling those chemical reactions? Was, you know, like, did destiny put me to be born and, you know, with my mom in South Korea, or is that a result of her free will in conceiving me? And it's a hard question for me to answer. I definitely don't know the answer because I always go back and forth from it. And whenever I run into these synchronistic moments, as much as I think I have free will, these events, I can't explain them. And I feel like they were pre-designed for me to reach. I
Hmm.
feel like I was meant to be there. I feel like, you know, this is definitely a moment that was supposed to happen in my life. But that takes away from the idea of free will again. And so you have to go back and forth a little bit.
Yeah.
I think that there are several timelines that maybe we were supposed to live, and um and maybe we are simultaneously living them, you know, like I totally believe in the idea of like parallel universes and stuff like this. So maybe the timeline that I'm in right now is more of a destiny timeline versus another timeline that I would face that would be more of a free will timeline, if that makes sense.
Yeah, my mom and I were just having a conversation about this over lunch today. It's fascinating. And likewise, we don't have an answer really. It seems to be kind of both, you know, like
Yeah.
it's a neat thing to contemplate though. And again, I was just curious because likewise, I've had many things that are so synchronistic that it gives me that sense. And yet, yeah, I agree with you scientifically, like that it seems like a lot of things are kind of predetermined, and yet the whole thing seems to hinge on this idea of free will in a lot of ways. The choice between like fear and love, for example, those binary choices to go or to
Mhm.
stay, or, you know, I think it seems like we get to make, but maybe that's all an illusion.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
I don't know, you know, I always have to think about like the human ego and how much we think that we have control and like how much we think we own our identities. And like I always go back and forth from thinking like, well, is that my ego thinking like telling me that I have free will, or do I actually have free will? You know?
I do. I have the same battle up in my head, or
Yeah.
it's not a battle, but the same conversation. Yeah. Hmm. Hey, I keep seeing the cute giraffe peeking behind you, and I noticed in your bio also that you mentioned you like giraffes. Do you want to talk about why you like giraffes, or is it just a thing?
Back in high school, I used to do a lot of drugs. Um, like high school and early college days, basically. Um, so it's kind of related to those days. I just
Mhm.
had I had a mushroom trip with maybe 4 of my friends,
Mhm.
and we had this group hallucination of a giraffe sitting in the corner of the room. And ever since then, I've been obsessed with them. And my friend Jessica, who was part of that trip with me, who was taking mushrooms with me that day, also has the same obsession with giraffes now. So
Hmm, that's interesting. I had a
yeah.
group hallucination once and I also have done a lot of psychedelics. So, but only one time out of all those times did I have a group
Yeah,
hallucination.
I've only had one really like definable group hallucination, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah,
So yeah,
cool. Yeah, I'm
yeah.
fascinated by some of the new research that's coming out about microdosing and just that sense that you and I seem to share about unification on this planet that I don't know whether that comes from a psychedelic experience or not. I guess that's I think
I
I know
think
people who feel that way who haven't had a psychedelic experience. So I don't think it's the only
definitely,
way to get to that,
I think the psychedelic experience is definitely something that can propel you
Hmm.
into that belief system, but I don't think it's the only way because I've definitely know lots of people who have never taken any psychedelics who have similar views
Yeah,
as far as that goes. Um, For me, psychedelics are what saved my life, honestly. And the whole, like, it's funny, like all these new studies coming out about treating addiction and depression and everything else with psychedelics. When about eight or 9 years ago, I actually wrote a paper in college about the decriminalization of LSD and why we should decriminalize it. And that paper was based off solely my personal experience of getting off of heroin
hmm
through LSD, through a trip that I had on LSD, and also getting over a lot of my manic depressive episodes.
hmm
Um, and I had a lot of like mental instability issues like back in those days, and I was taking all kinds of SSRIs and like sleeping pills and anti-anxiety pills and stuff like this. And I finally had this mind-opening trip on acid. And this is honestly the reason why I'm also not an atheist anymore, is because I feel like I made contact to that God source during this acid trip,
hmm
where I had a sudden realization of exactly what I was doing to myself, to my life, and to the people around me. And that's when I ended up breaking up with my boyfriend at the time, who was a heroin addict. I stopped doing heroin. I stopped doing all the other bullshit drugs. So, I still smoke weed. I still do acid every once in a while, but that's still a very rare occasion. Those two I don't really consider like bad drugs necessarily, but like speed, heroin, coke, all those things that I was doing, I stopped doing that day. And
Right.
I moved out of Las Vegas. I moved to Denver for about 6 months after this trip happened, just to get clean and to like completely sever ties with the people that I had in my life. That was the hardest thing. It's not necessarily the drugs that you get addicted to. It's the support system and the people that you have around you that you get addicted to. And it's funny referring to other drug addicts as a support system, but when you guys are drug addicts together, you guys are definitely supporting each other in your addiction, you know?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and the thinking patterns, I still struggle with some of that currently. Is like you get along with that comes a way of thinking, a way of talking, all of that that can be difficult to I think just a sudden shift is probably one of the best ways to do it because otherwise it can be a long
Yeah.
path, Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's definitely one of the biggest life-changing moments of my life, is that trip on LSD that I had that made me just kind of snap out of it. I don't know how to explain it other than that,
Mhm.
that I just kind of snapped out of it. Um, and I think under the right circumstances, LSD and psilocybin can be very powerful therapeutic tools as far as like overcoming you know, even past traumas. And, you know, because that's why addiction and all that stuff starts anyways, is because you don't have a proper way to deal with your past traumas or whatever you may have gone through, you know. And so I think that's why psilocybin and LSD are so powerful, because I was just saying this to one of my friends the other day. They are literally the biggest mirrors that you'll ever be faced with, and you have to like see yourself from an outside point of view when you're on psychedelics, and then you finally start to realize kind of like how all of this works, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, I'm in favor of therapeutic use, and I'm fascinated by microdosing these days. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you already mentioned that you don't have plans extending into the future, but if you like just had a daydream about a ideal future, what would some of that look like? Do you care to share some of that?
Well, I went to college for creative writing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so my ideal future, I would just be in the jungles of Indonesia in my little cabin, writing away, drinking my coffee, you know, looking at my beautiful view. You know, that would be the ultimate dream of mine, is to become successful enough in writing that like I would be able to live remotely like that.
Nice. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I have a similar aspiration to the freedom to, you know, and to be able to do it through creativity and writing. Writing is a wonderful gift. Not everybody has it. I have to remind myself. I will remind you.
I've been getting lots of reminders lately about my writing, actually, and like talking about the synchronicities. When I was in Barcelona, I went on this. I went on a food tour, but my tour guide had gotten sick and asked somebody to sub in for him, and this lady was just absolutely amazing. And I had gotten to the tour prior to the other group. I was by myself, and there were 7 other people on the tour, but they were all in the same group. They were all coming there together. And they ended up being late that day. They called the tour guide lady and told her that they were going to be 20 minutes late. So me and her were just sitting there. She wasn't even supposed to be my tour guide. And she looks at me and she goes, "Do you want to go do something fun?" And I'm like, "Yeah, of course I want to go do something fun." And she's like, "Okay, this is perfect because I'm a member of the society and I'm only allowed to bring in one person at a time when we go there, but it's one of my favorite places in Barcelona." And so she takes me there and we're talking, and I get into the conversation that I used to be a writer, and she's telling me, "Oh my God, this is perfect because where we're going is actually a library." And she hadn't told me any of this prior to us like walking towards there. And this library is, you know, I'm a big book nerd. And I
Mm-hmm.
love old books. I love libraries. I love like the architecture of libraries and stuff like this. And this was probably one of the most beautiful libraries I'd ever been in. And she turns around to me and she goes, "You know, if you're a writer, this is actually not just a library. This is the library of the writing school here."
Hmm.
So I felt like that was like just like a big sign from the universe. The fact that like the other group was late, that they were all together, that this wasn't even supposed to be my tour guide, and we're one-on-one here, like just due to coincidence basically, and that she happens to be this member of this writing school that has this amazing library, and I get to be taken on a tour there, you know, just by happenstance basically. And that was probably like considered moving to Barcelona that day. I definitely considered moving to Barcelona that day. I still am, actually. I'm looking into the requirements of going to that school and everything. So,
Neat.
yeah.
So what do you write poetry? What do you like to write?
I like to write fiction.
Fiction.
But stylistically, my favorite author is Kurt Vonnegut.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're familiar with him, and I feel like stylistically I would match up very similar to how Kurt Vonnegut writes. where, you know, he gets shoved into like this science fiction category a lot, where he's not necessarily like a science fiction writer, but the topics that he deals with, I guess, you know, time travel, space travel, all this stuff, you know, I guess puts him into that category, but it's not necessarily science fiction, if that makes sense. So
Nice.
yeah.
So if you had 3 gold coins or 3 gold tickets that were like wishes that you could make with no limitations, and one of them had to be for the world, and one of them had to be for you, and one of them could be for whatever you want it to be for, what would your 3 wishes? And they're not like once in a lifetime. You probably could have 3 more wishes tomorrow, but today you could have 3 wishes.
That's such a hard question, because I mean, of course everybody wants world peace, you know, but is that really something that the human ego could handle? I don't think so. I think the reason why there is no peace in the world is because the human ego still exists. And so getting, as far as what I want for the world, I would want, I guess, more compassion, especially within the big leaders of the world. I think compassion is definitely the most important thing. I'm not necessarily wanting everybody to live the same life and have the same ideals and have the same culture and stuff like this. I don't want to impose on like other people's like way of life. But I think when you have compassion for the people around you, I think that can change everything. As for myself, I would wish that I don't necessarily want to be a millionaire, but I wish I had enough money and comfort in my life that I can travel endlessly, you know, and that I can find like something that I could make money off of doing if I had that option to be able to travel for a year, you know? So I think that would probably be like my biggest wish, is that I would have the funds and the means to travel for a couple of years until I figure out what I'm doing with my life exactly. And what was the third one?
Your choice.
My choice. I don't know. I'd probably give that wish to my mom, honestly, and let her do something with it. She's probably the only person I really, really care about in this world, you know? Not to say I don't care about my friends and stuff, but you know, if it came down to it, the one person I would save from a nuclear explosion, that would be my mom, you know?
One person you give one of your gold wishes to, so that's pretty big. Yeah.
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 I would want her to be happy, so I would give her my third wish.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I have just a kind of a fun question, which is, if you were a hat, what kind of hat would you be and why?
Wow, that's an interesting question. I would be, I don't know. I would be like a fun beanie with like 2 pom-poms or something. Something that's practical, you know, you would use it, but still gives you that little bit of fun flair, you know?
Nice. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, is there anything else that you want to share before we wrap it up? Anything that you feel inclined to tell us about, me about, or us being the world at large?
I don't know, just to practice compassion, I guess. I think that's the biggest thing. I think communication and compassion are the 2 things that are lacking in this world today. And so the more you take the time to communicate with people, the more your compassion for them grows. So I think that's probably like the most important thing to consider getting off of here.
Yeah, amen to that. I agree with you wholeheartedly. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me. It's a short but sweet, I think, nice meeting, and I don't have any other like prefab questions. I just kind of wanted to get to know you and talk more about how, how again, you seem like a genuinely happy, playful person, and I'm passionate about building more playfulness into all aspects. In particular, I want to create like educational systems that help people realize more playfulness in all aspects. So when I see somebody like you who seems to be really joyful and playful, it catches my attention. And so, yeah, I appreciate you talking to me and sharing your story a little bit.
Thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun. I'm glad you asked me to do this.
Well, thank you. And I look forward to talking to you more in the future and seeing your adventures out there in the great world. So
Yeah.
if there's anything
We'll
I can do for you, don't hesitate to ask. So, yeah.
All right. Actually, I was wondering if you're getting ready to rent out the Head Hutt lately.
I
Yeah.
am actually. I'm glad you asked. And yeah, I'm working on my walkway to make it a little less construction-y back there, because I started to rent it and then I realized, I need to make it just a little
Yeah.
less dangerous for the average person. But I am hoping to roll that out maybe by April. Actually, I'm right now I have some things blocked off. I'm working on my roof, gonna work on the walkway, and hopefully get a bunch of
Definitely let me know when you have the
yeah.
have that up for rent and stuff, because I would love to bring my mom over there. I think she would just love that place so much. So
Nice.
yeah.
Well, thanks for your enthusiasm and your joy and your smiles, and I look forward to seeing you in the future.
All right, thank you.
That wraps up my first conversation with Rosa Yee. You can find her on Facebook and other social media platforms, and she would love it if you would look into what you can do to help giraffes. www.giraffeconservation.org might be a good place to start. You can help support this podcast and my endeavors to take over the world with playful consciousness by checking out my courses, books, t-shirts, music, and art. You can find out more about me and my work on this and other subjects with a quick search for Angel Lilly or at www.angellily.com. I encourage you to check out the Authentic Action School on Facebook or at AuthenticActionSchool.com. Sign up to be on our mailing list so you can keep up with exciting things we're getting into this season and into the future. I appreciate your attention today. Thank you for listening. As always, I welcome your questions, comments, and suggestions. I wish you lightheartedness and joy. Don't forget to play every day and drive forward.